sense to you? All right. So now he makes predictions. No one knows who will live in this cage in the future, or whether at the end of this tremendous development, entirely new prophets will arise, or there will be a great rebirth of ideas and ideals of neither mechanized petrification embellished with a sort of convulsive self-importance. Okay? Sorry. I read this wrong, okay? Let me do this again. No one knows who will live in this cage in the future, or whether at the end of this tremendous development, entirely new prophets will arise, or there will be a great rebirth of old ideas. Okay, so what we're saying is this. As capitalism conquers more and more territory, as it becomes more embedded into everyday life, there will be a nostalgia for the Catholic Church. And there may arise new prophets who will rebel against capitalism, just like Martin Luther rebelled against the Catholic religion, okay? And these new ideas will happen. They're called fascism and communism. All right? So capitalism will give rise to the Nazis as well as the communists, the Bolsheviks. So this is the future, okay? So he's making a prophecy. But if these things don't happen, then what will happen is this. Mechanized petrification embellished with a sort of convulsive self-importance. We believe today that we have achieved divinity. We have achieved heaven on earth. Capitalism is the greatest good. But if you think about it, our civilization has become a zombie civilization. It is about soul. It is about spirituality. It is about heart. It's all machine. It's all money. It's all obsession. Nothing else. Okay? So sorry that this is not appearing properly, okay? But that's what he's saying here. For of the last stage of this cultural development, it might well be truly said, specialists without spirit. Okay? We have scientists who lack purpose. They have no sense of divinity. They have no sense of mission, okay? They're just doing technical work. Scientists who just do technical work. Sensualists without heart. This nullity imagines that it has achieved a level of civilization never before achieved. Okay? All right? So that's what he's saying. He's saying, like, our civilization, it is a zombie civilization. It is nullity. It is nothing. It is nihilistic. But we believe this is perfection. Okay? And if you think about it, he's describing perfectly the world we live in today. It's perfect. Okay? He wrote this in about 1900. He predicted this would happen. And he's right. We live in a zombie civilization. All right, okay. So this is Georg Simmel, who is a friend of Max Weber's, the contemporaries, the colleagues, their friends. And he's trying to explain where money comes from. Okay, and as explained previously, money now has become a substitute for the idea of God. It's become reality itself. Okay, and why is that? Okay, here explains it. The projection of mere relations into particular objects is one of the great accomplishments of the mind. Okay, so we're able to take an idea and transpose this idea onto a thing. Okay, we're able to take the idea of God and turn it into money. Okay, we can do that, and that's a great thing. When the mind is embodied in objects, these become a vehicle for the mind endowed with a livelier and more comprehensive activity. Okay? When we do this, when we turn God into money, our understanding of reality becomes much more vibrant. We're able to understand reality much better. Okay? The ability to construct such symbolic objects attains its greatest triumph in money. Okay? Money becomes a placeholder for everything. Right? For money represents pure interaction in its purest form. How do we know if we're working hard? How do we know if we are succeeding? How do we know if we have friends? Through money, okay? Through capital accumulation. It makes comprehensible the most abstract concept. It is an individual thing whose essential significance is to reach beyond individualities. It standardizes everything, okay? Everyone agrees on money. Thus, money is the adequate expression of the relationship of man to the world, which can only be grasped in single and concrete instances, yet only really conceived when the singular becomes the embodiment of the living mental process which interweaves all singularities and in this fashion creates reality, okay? So at the beginning of the class, I talked about money, right? How money takes all our different perspectives and converges into one thing, okay? And then it redesigns reality through this lens, okay? That's what he's saying here, okay? The last person I want to talk about is Emile Durkheim. And he's a French sociologist, and his most famous book is called On Suicide. He's trying to discuss why is it that Protestants are much more likely to kill themselves than Catholics. Okay? And his answer is, it's because Protestants believe you have to struggle individually with faith, whereas Catholics don't believe that. Catholics believe that you just follow community rituals and you're good. Okay? So Protestants feel that they're alone and abandoned in this world, and that they must struggle out of this darkness. And that leads to tremendous energy, okay? But it also leads sometimes to self-defeat. It leads to hopelessness, and that's why they kill themselves. Okay, so let's not read this, but that's what he's saying, okay? Okay, but I want to read this. This is really important. He's talking about the fact that Protestants transfer this anxiety in the accumulation of wealth, right? They're anxious about what God is. They're anxious whether or not God loves them, and they focus on the accumulation of wealth, okay? And this is a problem because overexcited ambitions always exceeds the results that they achieve, whatever these may be, because they have not been aware that they should not go any further. Okay, right? Let's just say that you want to lose weight. Your obsession is to lose weight. It's possible that you may die in the process because you don't know how much weight you should lose. You don't know what the proper equilibrium is, okay? You just want to lose as much weight as possible. That's a problem with accumulating money. You try to get more and more money to prove your worth to God, but you can't stop. You don't know when to stop. Okay? Consequently, nothing satisfies them, and all this agitation perpetually sustains itself without reaching any form of satiety. You cannot stop, okay? You look at Jack Ma, the richest man in China at some point, right? He has all this money, $50 billion. What is he doing with it? Nothing. All he wants is to make more and more money. Why? Because only the acquisition of money brings him happiness. Nothing else does. It's a disease. Above all, as this race towards an unattainable goal can give no satisfaction, but the race itself, if that can be called satisfaction, should anything chance to get in its way, then one is left empty-handed. Okay? You're so focused on the obtainment of wealth that if you lose this process, okay, if you stop this process, you will feel devoid of everything, okay? You could have $50 billion in the bank, but if you drop out of this race, if you stop the accumulation of money, you will fall into anxiety and depression, right? Now, it so happens that at this time, the struggle becomes more violent and more painful, both because it is less regulated and because competition is fiercer. All right, so he's talking about capitalism. How, because it's all about the accumulation of wealth, and the accumulation of wealth can only bring about more anxiety and more stress, it's bringing out all social bonds, okay? It's bringing all traditional morality. It's bringing out all customs and norms. All classes are caught up in it because there's no longer any established classification. If you're rich, if you're poor, you're stuck in the system. No matter how rich you are, you're still playing this game. You can never escape it. So the effort is all the greater at the moment when it becomes more unproductive. How can the will to live not be weakened in these conditions? Okay, so I know this is hard, and I know what I'm saying is going to be depressing, but what Max Weber is saying is we live in a zombie civilization. Okay, that's what he's saying. What Emile Durkheim is saying is that this civilization is on a path to suicide. It's on a path to self-destruction. because there's no purpose in this civilization. We exist for the sake of accumulating nothing of value. And eventually, we'll just recognize this and we'll all have to die. Our civilization is on a path to suicide. And you know what? They're right. They're prophets. Think about this. Never before in human history have we been as wealthy as technological progress, right? We have the internet. As more connected. We can fly all around the world. You can go to the United States and study and then come back and work, okay? You have more opportunities than ever before. But again, think about this, okay? Never before in human history have there been more depression, anxiety, more suicides, more feeling of disconnection. Okay? So, think about this. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's just say that I have anxiety. And the way that I deal with this anxiety is I collect newspapers. Every day I'm out collecting newspapers. I fill this room with newspapers, and then I go to the next room and I fill up newspapers. Everyone would say that I am hoarding, okay? The word is hoarding. And it is a disease, right? It's a disease. We all know it's a disease. If I were to go talk to a psychologist, he would say, I have a disease. I need to take some anxiety medication. I need to relax, go on vacation, whatever, okay? But let's just say this. Let's just say I have anxiety, and all I want to do is make money. I make $1 million. I don't spend it. I put it in the bank, and I go make $2 million. And then I go make $3 million. And I'm not spending it. It's all in the bank, okay? How is that different from hoarding? How is that different from me collecting newspapers and just putting it in the house? It's not. There's no difference, right? But everyone would think, I'm a great person. I am a good person because I'm working hard and I'm saving money, right? It's a contradiction in our society. It's a contradiction that exists because our society, our civilization is incapable of recognizing that we are a zombie civilization that is on the path to civilization of suicide. All right? Okay, so this was depressing, but I feel as though we needed to discuss this, okay? And again, this thinking ideas that we learned previously, we're combining it, and we are going to use these ideas to understand the future development, okay? All right, so any questions?
Yeah, I have several questions.
Great.
The first one is the Protestants are more likely to suicide.
Yep.
I believe that it's believed in Christianity that suicide is a sin.
Okay. You're absolutely right, okay? You're absolutely right. So in the Catholic religion, suicide is the worst sin that you can commit, okay? And in the Protestant religion, there are also mechanisms against suicide. But let's go back to the theory. The theory is double predestination. God has already decided who will be burned in hell and who will go to heaven. And only a minority can go to heaven, right? And there's nothing you can do to change this. You understand? So if you follow the logic, if you commit suicide, you're doing God's will. Because you commit suicide because you don't believe in God, or you don't have enough faith in God, which means that you were condemned anyway. Okay? So suicide, it's not a sin, it's a sign of weakness. Does that make sense? Okay? But also what's important for us to remember is that suicide, it's also a feeling of disconnection. It's a belief that no one cares if you die or not. No one supports you in your life, and therefore you're better off dead. If you die, you're not actually impacting the community, okay? And that's Imam Durkheim's argument. You're always going to have people kill themselves in all religions. You can't really stop that. But Protestants are more likely to kill themselves because Protestant is a much more individualistic religion than Catholic. Okay? All right. Does that make sense? Great. Okay. Next question?
I believe.
Okay, so these three are not philosophers. These three are sociologists. So they're social scientists. They're Max Weber, who is considered the founder of sociology, Georg Simmel, and Emil Durkheim. These are the three major sociologists that really created modern social sciences. Okay.
They unearth a lot of problems, but do they have any idea of like providing potential solutions?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay. Okay, so these are social scientists, and the thing about social scientists is they feel their responsibility is to diagnose problems. And once they diagnose problems, then it's up to us to figure out the solution, okay? So let's figure out what they're saying, okay? So Weber is saying that this anxiety, which leads to capitalism, will ultimately lead to civilizational decline. Okay? That's his main argument. Okay? So, again, like, he's not writing at the beginning of Protestantism, where Protestantism was a persecuted religion, and where it really gave hope to a lot of people, and it really empowered them to transform their lives, okay? He's really talking about late Protestantism when it's really conquered the world, and he's seeing a lot of issues, okay? And so he's looking at this. He's looking at the anxiety which causes capitalism, which causes civilization to decline. So he says there has to be a response. And there's going to be three possible responses, okay? The first possible response is nothingness, okay? In which case, guess what? We become a zombie society. A zombie society just means that we just go on day to day doing whatever, but we don't know why. We don't really care. We have no soul. We have no spirit. We have no energy, okay? That's what a zombie society is. And that's what he's afraid of. But it's also possible that there is a reaction, okay, which will lead to the return of the Catholic Church, which was basically a theocracy. Does that make sense? That's the second possibility. And then another possibility is the idea of new prophets, or people who are trying to channel this discontent with capitalism in order to form new movements in the way that Martin Luther and John Calvin did, right? And in the 20th century, there were two major responses to the problem of capitalism. The first, of course, is called communism. The second is called fascism, okay, or the Nazis. All right, so the 20th century was really about defeating these two critics of capitalism, right? That's what the 20th century really was about. You first had World War II, which defeated Nazism, and then you have the Cold War, which defeated communism, all right? So this is out, okay? So right now, okay, our two paths ahead of us is either a zombie society or a return to a theocracy. And so, if I'm a betting man, what a future looks like, I think it is most likely the world becomes a theocracy. All right? And there are theocracies that exist today. So, for example, let's look at North Korea. North Korea is a theocracy where people are not allowed to think for themselves. People must do what they're told. Okay? And it's all a very heavily ritualized society which worships the divinity of the supreme leader. We may hate this society. We may be disgusted by this society, but guess what? Okay, this is really important. People in North Korea, even though they're poorer, even though they have less freedom, they are on average happier and more fulfilled and more energetic than most societies. You compare North Korea with South Korea, okay? Right? In South Korea, no one's having kids. That's a sign of complete hopelessness in their society. North Korea, they're having a lot of kids. That's a sort of faith in their society. Okay? So that's what Max Weber is predicting. He's predicting these three possible paths. We tried the New Prophets path, didn't work. Okay? We don't want to become a zombie society. So the only path ahead of us is to become a theocracy, a return to the tyranny of the Catholic Church. But the tyranny gives us meaning, purpose, and spirituality, a connection with God that we are lacking into the society. Okay? But, okay, let's just say, for the sake of argument, you know what? I like my individual freedom, right? I don't want to go to a theocracy where everyone's a slave. What can we do about this? Okay, so one issue that Max Weber doesn't really address, because he doesn't recognize the problem, is all these problems we're talking about is a problem of mass society. Okay? When you have mass society, your options are much more limited. When you're a mass society, you need to feed millions and millions of people. You need to organize them. You need to give them something to do. Therefore, your political flexibility doesn't really exist. Okay? So, in other words, okay, thinking ahead, there are two solutions. Either you become a theocracy, or you figure out the problem of mass society. Okay? If society becomes, I'm sorry to say this, but if most people in the world died, then we would have more freedom in this world. Okay? But if we choose to continue the system where we have 8 billion people struggling on this earth, then you're stuck with moving towards a theocracy. Okay? So that's what Max Weber is saying. He's basically giving us a prophecy about our future. All right? Now, okay, having said that, let's look at Durkheim. Okay? Durkheim. What's he saying? He's saying this, okay? And this is really important, okay? It's a hard argument, but this is what he's saying. All right. Why do you have suicide? Suicide is the result of disconnection. If we do not think we are valuable in the world, if we think that we are alone in this world, we don't want to be part of this world, we kill ourselves. Okay? It's a very simple idea, right? But then the question then is, why is there disconnection? Because of anxiety, right? It's a belief that if I don't work hard, God will not favor me. Right? Why is anxiety important? Because it leads to capitalism. So in other words, these four concepts are interconnected. All right? This connection leads to suicide, but we have disconnection because of anxiety. But anxiety is what feeds capitalism. If people weren't anxious, they wouldn't go out and work so hard to make money. Right? They'd be like, you know what, I'm pretty happy making my $10 a day and sit at home and eating noodles because I don't care. Right? Your society will collapse. Capitalism will collapse. Okay, so do you understand? Capitalism creates suicide. That's why we have the highest suicide rate in the whole, in entirety of human history, okay? More anxiety, more depression, more suicide, more unhappiness, more loneliness than ever before in human history. Okay? So, you can't say capitalism is the issue, but if you work out the logic, capitalism is the issue. Right? And that's why today in the United States and elsewhere in the world, they're talking about a return to a theocracy. Because the direct response to capitalism is a theocracy. Let's just all obey the church, and we're good. Okay? Now, women will have to stay at home and give birth to kids. Oh, and also, like, if you're homosexual, we're going to have to kill you. But, you know, that's the price we're going to have to pay, okay? So it's a terrible world that we're going to. But what Durkheim is saying is, if we continue on the path of capitalism, people are going to choose the path of theocracy. That theocracy is almost a natural outcome of capitalism because of the problem of disconnection. Okay? But are you going to be able to defeat capitalism ever? And the answer is no, okay? We tried in the 20th century. It led to the death of tens of millions of people. Okay? Good luck trying to defeat capitalism. You can't do it. It can't be done. It's too powerful. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? Any more questions? Okay, great. So next Tuesday, we do the Silent Revolution, okay?